Well, it's been a minute since we've all spoken. Sal Capaccio, Matt Bove. It's always game day in Buffalo. Welcome in. A lot has happened in Buffalo, and in multiple sports, by the way, over the last, week since we've been here on the podcast. Thanks a lot for tuning in, potting wherever you do, the Odyssey app, WGR Sports Radio 550, and of course, across all your podcasting platforms, and of course, on the Sal Sports YouTube page. Matt, you got to witness. I did too. I got to witness it, but you were working. I was in the stands. I was the fan with my
Yeah.
family. You were a reporter down in the field after the game, covering the game.
Mm-hmm.
Won a championship. The Bandits back to back. How cool was that for the city of Buffalo?
Oh, it was really cool. The atmosphere there was awesome. And I think the atmosphere was a little bit different than it was a year ago when they won. I was at that game with friends just sitting in the stands. I was at this game reporting for work on the fields. But the last game, the one they won 2 years ago, was a blowout. So I think that by the time the game had ended, people had already come to the realization that they were going to win. Even though they pulled away at the end, it was still a little bit close. So that's why I think that big explosion of celebration and sound at the end was really cool. I mean, definitely the best market in the NLL for professional lacrosse. This place loves their Bandits, and it was cool to see them go back to back. And now the quest for the three-peat starts.
So 2 years ago, 3 seasons ago, I guess now, my friend who has season tickets, they were playing in the third and final game against Colorado at home. And he took my son, Max, who at the time was 8. And I said, oh my God, he's a chance to witness a Buffalo championship. They lost that night. If you remember, they lost in game 3.
I remember.
And I'm like, I can't believe I felt like a bad dad that I basically sent my son out to watch a Buffalo team lose a championship and another team celebrating on their home field. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So last year, they go back to the championship again. We go to game 1. I mean, whether you win or lose game 1, it's not going to be the end. Mm-hmm. They won. It was amazing. They go and they lose game 2 in Colorado. Had a chance again to go to game 3. And I actually, as the dad this time, I said, I don't know if I could do that to him again. I don't really want to. We had something else going on that night. It was more of a, he could do it. We'd have to miss this, but do I really want him to witness it? So I decided against it, and they won. And then I'm like, I can't believe it. He had a chance. Okay, so fast forward to this year. Secondary market tickets were crazy, right? I mean, they were just, they were going crazy. So luckily, we were able to get like more of a face value type price on going. I said, we could do it. If we could, if I'm not paying astronomical prices and I can get in the building, pay face value, that's great. We were able to do that, buy some tickets, off some people, face value. We went in and we had really good seats in the corner in 113 where the Bandits goalie is for the fourth quarter, right? Where Matt Vincent's for the fourth quarter. So I said to Max, they do this and they were winning. They're going to celebrate right in front of us. It's going to be awesome. They're going to come out and pour on the field. By the way, we sit down in our seats. I turn to my left, sitting right next to us, Reed Ferguson and Matt Hawk, right next to us.
Oh, no kidding.
So literally right next to you? Right next to me. Literally, it was me, Max, Yana, Matt Hawk, Reed Ferguson. Like in the same, we were like sharing 5 seats. So it was great. And we got to watch the whole game. They were a part of it. And of course they won. And I feel like I got a reprieve here. And my son, who's now 10, got a chance, and dad, I've never seen it, a chance to see a Buffalo team win a championship on their home field.
I've been in the building for the last 3 that they've won. I was there in 2008 as a fan in the last row of the stadium, the last row of the arena. I was there last year as a fan, and then I was there this year for work. And I will say, I didn't really think about it too much on the Saturday of working, but then realizing after the game that we were basically going to run right out onto the field and try and grab interviews and get video of those guys celebrating, like that was really cool. So, you lean on, that's when the relationships help. You lean on the people who you've talked to in the past, like Zach Belter, one of their defensemen, is from Niagara Wheatfield High School. He was the first interview that I went and got because we've known each other for a long time. Tohoku Nanticoke, we just did a really big story about the history of lacrosse in the Native American community and how it's potentially not going to be played in the Olympics under like their flag, and that they're fighting back on that. So we went and talked to him because we've got the relationship there. So those are the times when relationships matter, when, they're drinking beer and celebrating and you need to pull them away for a minute and 15 seconds to try and talk to them quick. But yeah, the timing worked out, and it was really, really cool to be part of that. Just a small part of it.
Did you have goggles on in the locker room for a champagne spray celebration?
No, we didn't go in the locker room. I don't think we were
Okay.
allowed in the locker room, but I was down on the field basically like a minute after the final horn went off. And that's when, the confetti is shooting everywhere and you get all that experience. But it was cool because that happened around 10:30 p.m. And then we needed to go live for our 11 o'clock newscast right at 11 o'clock. And legitimately 30 seconds before we were about to go live, Josh Byrne was next to me. So I was like, Josh, in 30 seconds, I'm coming over to you. It's going to be on live television. And he was like, all right, let's go. And I've talked to him in the past about stuff. So right at the start of the 11 o'clock news, live with Josh Byrne, the NLL MVP, the NLL
Love it.
championship MVP. So that
Love it.
was cool too.
Very cool. Very good work by you and your team. And of course, WKBW TV Channel 7. That's awesome to see. Congratulations to the Buffalo Bandits, back-to-back champions, 2024 NLL champions. Very cool to see. The next day, the Bandits had a bit of a party. Now they're going to have more of a celebration and a parade, but they had a bit of a party downtown Buffalo, right at KeyBank Center in the plaza. At the same time that was happening, the Micah Hyde charity softball game was going on at Salem Field, just about 2 streets away. And I, once again, for the 4th year, have the pleasure and honor of being the on-field MC. Thankfully, as we record this today on Wednesday, I've recovered with my voice because it's a lot of, oh my God, home run, way back, that kind of thing going on all day, screaming. But it's a great time. No lie, Matt, is one of my favorite days of the year. I love it. It's great. It's great to see the players in that environment. It's great to see the friendships and the connection. And one big storyline related to that is Jordan Poyer, who's a member of the Miami Dolphins, coming back to play for Micah's charity softball tournament game in at the game, and then even taking the mic and saying, "You have the best quarterback in the league here in Buffalo." And he said, "I know that's going to go viral, but whatever." Right? I just think it just speaks to the tightness, the closeness, and the relationship and the friendship that Jordan and Micah have, and that Jordan and this team always have had with this city.
I also think that it maybe paints the picture of once we get through this year, regardless of what happens, Jordan Poyer will be remembered for his time in Buffalo and Micah Hyde will be remembered for his time in Buffalo. I feel like they're the new wave of fan favorite players that will be around in 10 years, in 15 years, when somebody is leading the charge at the new stadium, when somebody is back in town doing some sort of charity event. It feels like those are going to be some of the faces that we will see popping up. It's funny, like Josh Allen is in his own stratosphere, right? Like whatever happens with the rest of his career, he's always going to be the guy that this kind of era immediately resonates with. But then after that, I think Hyde and Poyer are really high on that list because it ended a little bit messy with Tre'Davious White because of the injuries. It ended very messy with Stephon Diggs, and he was only here for 4 years. I think when we get a few years removed from all of it, these players who have left on not the best terms will be held to a higher standard and will be looked upon and remembered in a better light than maybe they are now. But like Jordan Poyer was a really, really good player for this team for a long time. And obviously Micah Hyde was the exact same. I just keep going back to the clips of the event. Obviously you're on the field. Josh Allen chanting one more year when Micah Hyde has the microphone. I just keep wondering, is there a chance that he comes back and plays for the Bills? And I don't know the answer to that.
The answer to is there a chance? Yes. I wonder what the percentage chance is. To me, it's less likely than it is likely. But let me just kind of walk through the timeline here of what has been said over the last couple of weeks. Micah did his media availability on Thursday before the game on Sunday. And at that media availability, he told us how he's staying in shape. He's ready. He's had great conversations with the Bills. He's not ready to make a decision on what he wants to do, but the Bills aren't forcing him into a decision. He also said, insanely, that he woke up one day and randomly ran a 10K just to see if he could get his best time. That's how these guys are wired differently, right? I mean, that's incredible, but that's how much he's staying in shape. So he truly doesn't know. We get to Sunday, he says the same thing to the media. Like, hey, he doesn't know what's going on. I had a chance to talk with Amanda, his wife, and she echoed those sentiments. I want everybody to know this is not posturing by Micah Hyde. This is not, I know what's going to happen. I'm keeping it a secret. Amanda looked me right in the eye and said, Sal, we just don't know what's going to happen. And, he's leaving all options open right now. He could wind up playing. He might not play. It could be now. It could be later. It could be not at all. We don't know. The one thing
Mhm.
Micah did say at that media availability was, it's either Bills or retire.
Yes.
And I do feel strongly about that right now. But I'm going to say this, Matt. If Micah Hyde in September gets those juices flowing and he misses playing football, because that's what's going to happen. He's going to start feeling it. He's going to say, why am I not with my boys? Right? He starts to get that. And the Bills go, Micah, there's just not a spot for you. And they can't pay him. And there's not a roster spot. I wouldn't rule it out that Micah Hyde says, well, I am a free agent. I can go other places and play. I'm not making that the story. What I'm saying is, I do think there's some wiggle room, even though he says that if he really wants to play again, it doesn't have to be Buffalo.
Sure. This is completely me speculating. Sal is much closer to this entire situation than I am because of his role as the MC at the tournament and the relationship he has with Micah. I think Micah Hyde is going to play for the Bills this season. I don't know the capacity. I don't know if it's going to be after training camp or if it's going to just be in a secondary role. I think they are going to scrounge up whatever little money that they have left and say, Micah, we really value you just as much off the field as we do on the field. You still got a house here. Your family obviously loves this area. Come back for one more year, try and guide these new young guys like Cole Bishop. And obviously Mike Edwards has had a lot of success, but like we want you to kind of be a coach to them. And we also want to know that if we need you, we have you as an option. I don't think he's going to be starting safety for this team for every snap like he has been in years past. I don't even know if he's going to play that much, but I just think that the longer the door is open, the more likely it is that he comes back. And I could see this as a training camp's about to come to an end. He didn't want to deal with all that nonsense of sleeping on a dorm room bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then he makes the call and says, Brandon, I'm ready. Just, I'll do whatever you need. And he'll be like the third or fourth safety on the roster. He'll play some snaps when it's an obvious passing situation and pretty much call it a day.
That's the area where I wonder. So, Micah Hyde, what could it look like? What role and when? Let's continue this discussion here on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Okay, so you say he's going to play for the Bills. I say I think it's very possible he could. But to me, it does not happen until November at least. I think this is a John Brown, Cole Beasley type of situation, maybe where you get deeper in the season, you're getting some injuries, guys are banged up. Micah is fresh, he's still working out. He doesn't have to do the training camp thing. He doesn't have to be onboarded. He knows the system. To me, if it happens, and I do think it's possible, I agree with you. If it happens, Matt, I don't think it's till after the halfway point of the season, even after the trade deadline, I would even say.
It almost feels like it would be a little bit like the year where he got hurt in week 2 and then he was cleared to play the week before he ultimately was able to come back, which would have been in the AFC Championship. I don't disagree with anything that you're saying, but I think if he gets that itch, that it happens sooner rather than later. That's just maybe my read on all of it. But
Well, listen. What happens is, and I just alluded to it, you know the way these guys are, right? This is what they've done their whole life. It's their identity, playing football. And we're not for right or wrong. I mean, they have families, and Micah is a very big family man. But once August comes around in September and he's not playing football, things will feel much different for him physically and mentally. And it's just going to be something where he was going to be like, hey, he's going to be at point, I should say, hey, I don't know what to do with myself. Maybe Amanda says, get the hell out of the house even and go play football for all we know, right? I mean, because that's what happens this time of year with people. He is 33, and he said, look, I want to have a healthy life. These are all things he has to consider. He does feel good. He says he's healthy. He's cleared, all of that. So the neck injury thing, we can obviously have to have a discussion about and think about, and he does. But as far as like right now, he's able to play.
Yeah, it's once again, him saying retire or Bills. I do believe that, even though I understand your point.
I think he believes that to be true.
For sure. But the moment that I keep going back to is the owners' meetings in Florida, in Orlando, when Brandon Beane had every opportunity to kind of close the door and hasn't. And I know that there has to be, even though we don't know the percentage, and maybe Micah truly doesn't know right now, I bet the Bills have an idea. It's like, Micah, just tell us, are you leaning one way or another? The Bills have to know that. And I think they do, because I think that they need to just kind of have a plan in place. Like, they're about to get $10 million that opens up. Micah Hyde's not getting a big contract at all. But if you need to stash a little bit in an emergency fund because you think he's coming back, then I think they probably do that, because for what it would cost to bring him back, I think that they would absolutely do it. Micah Hyde is not getting $3, $4, $5 million a year. He's getting $1.5 million, $2 million to come back for one season. And if the Bills can set that to the side, I think they will.
The question I would have is, would Micah play for that? I don't know
and
if
if
Micah
he
Hyde would
won't,
play for that.
and if
then
he
then
won't,
they don't do it then.
Exactly.
Right.
And
I
if
agree
you
with
won't, then you're not doing it.
100%.
It's still, for as wealthy as these guys are, that's still a very significant amount of money.
Right. Here's my opinion on it. I don't know. Micah's not said this to me. Amanda's not said this. My opinion is, I don't think Micah Hyde's signing a Jordan Poyer deal with the Buffalo Bills to play. I think it's got to be more significant than that for him to feel it's worth it. And even if he was to play, you say like his role could be the special. Is he coming back to play that role? I don't know. See, those are the things that I just wonder about and how it all fits. But I do agree with you that your initial sentiment, the overall picture, that this is not out of the question. He might wind up playing for the Buffalo Bills. And by the way, adding on to all of this is Mike Edwards has a shoulder injury. He's going to be out like 3-4 weeks, according to Sean McDermott, which might lend some, reason why they signed D. Delaney, right, a week ago to, join the squad, and they have an extra guy at safety. So we'll see how the secondary goes. If Micah Hyde does come back, and by the way, real quick to wrap up the Micah Hyde softball game, great time. Thanks to Team Lammy. They did an amazing job. Micah Imagine for Youth Foundation, all the sponsors, and of course, Josh Allen winning the home run derby. Winning it back. Spencer Brown had it last year. AJ Epinesa was close this year. He had the lead. Josh kind of caught him. They got to the second round. Josh wins the home run derby. So congratulations to him. What a fantastic day. Great seeing Bills fans out there. It was a really, really cool day. It was also, if Micah is going to come back, announced last week, that would be at St. John Fisher for training camp if that were to happen. Yep. The Bills are going to be at training camp. How about this day and age? We know that news can be broken from a lot of places, but Pete Gwelly, the Bills COO, actually posted it and broke the news that the team is returning to training camp at St. John Fisher. But it is, he's a Rochester native, by the way. It's great for the team to be back at Fisher.
Yeah, and it's another one-year deal, it sounds like. So I think that they're trying to figure out what the long-term future of all of this looks like. This is, once again, speculation. This is more of an educated guess than anything else. I would imagine it stays in Rochester until the new stadium is built. And then once the new stadium is built, then I think you could just conceivably do everything back at your old facility. Not your, like, the current facilities where they practice now. I think you would just have to try and figure out a way of working that out. But I do think that they genuinely enjoy going to Rochester. I think they like it from a camaraderie standpoint. Obviously, the facilities at Fisher are not quite up to the level of what they're used to. They bring a ton of equipment. They pack all of their stuff into these moving trucks and they move it down to Rochester for basically a month of the year. As we've seen over the years, the time they spend in Rochester has become less and less. It goes from, okay, it's like a month, then it's 3 weeks, then it's 2 weeks, then it's 13 practices and 11 practice. I don't even know what the schedule looks like this time around, but I'm happy they're going back to Rochester because I think it's a really cool opportunity for the fans more than anything. I think for fans to go and get a good look at the team and get up and close to all of their favorite players, I think Rochester, at least at St. John Fisher, is the best atmosphere and potential for that.
We do know that the first practice will be on July 24th. We know that. That was posted.
Know that, yes.
All right. So as far as the Bills are concerned, now let's think about this. Their preseason schedule, is it the August 7th? I have to go back and look at this now to make sure I have the preseason schedule correct. Is it August 7th, Matt? Is that what the...
All I know is it's home, away, home. It's August 10th, Chicago.
10th. Yep, 17th.
August 17th at Pittsburgh, and then August 24th, Carolina.
Okay. So if you're going July 24, I would say maybe right before that first preseason game, the 10th might be... That's probably about where you usually would end.
Yeah. Well, they also will have, though, mixed in, I believe, their blue and red scrimmage. And I believe the date for that has actually already been announced.
Which is?
My guess is this. I don't know. I don't have that off the top of my head. My guess is that this Chicago game is a Saturday, that they wrap up at Fisher Wednesday the 7th or Thursday the 8th. That's my guess.
Ooh. Okay. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the blue and the red would probably be the second or third, and then I agree that would probably be right. And then you have the home preseason game. Maybe you do go back to Fisher for a day or two after that, but I don't know. We'll see. But either way, we'll have that schedule for you as soon as it comes out. We love going to St. John Fisher. We've had a lot of stories. We'll share a lot of those and, why we like going to Fisher, as we go on here on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. But it'll be nice to get back out there. I love it for the fans out there who live in Rochester, who have a chance to experience that. That's very cool as well. All right. So Bills back in town, though, in Buffalo for OTAs. Now, they have 9 OTA practices over a 3-week period. Then it's mandatory minicamp. We are only allowed 1 day as the media each of those 3 weeks. So Tuesday. We were out there on Tuesday, the 21st. We'll be back out there on Tuesday, the 28th, right after Memorial Day, and then the following Tuesday again, and then it's mandatory minicamp the following week. We get 1 day. We aren't here to make sweeping judgments about the 24 season based on what we said. That's for sure. I think Matt would agree. But we could tell you some of our observations. And the first thing that popped out to me
I
at
know what you're gonna
OTAs
say.
on. Go ahead.
I think I know what you're going to say. I don't want it. No, I'm going to write it in the private chat between the two of us.
Okay.
And if I'm right, so you say it and I'm going to type it. So
okay. The first thing that stood out to me, there are 2 things that stood out to me. 2 players.
Yep.
Chase Claypool.
Yep.
Dalton Kincaid.
It's literally, yep.
That is one of
Chase
them.
Claypool. Yep.
Thank you. There you go. Look at, why is there balloons?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know who's doing that. I don't know who
I don't know.
did that.
I don't know if we did that. I don't know. Yeah, way to go. I don't have no idea. Remember when we were doing the pod in Orlando and then we had fireworks everywhere behind us?
Yeah.
I want to get to Chase Claypool, but the first thing that actually did stand out to me was the work that Dalton Kincaid got. I mean, they were throwing to him all the time. It seemed like every time we looked up, Dalton Kincaid's making a catch somewhere down the field.
Yeah, if you could find your prop bets on Dalton Kincaid this year, it might be a good idea to do them. That was, to me, it is so drastically different, the team that they have and the receivers and the weapons that they have. And I know that it's still May. There's a long time to go, but you go out there as somebody who watches pretty much every practice and what you're used to. And it's like, oh, number 14 is not Stephon Diggs anymore. It's Chase Claypool. Number 13 is not Gabe Davis anymore. It's Mac Hollins. There have been very few practices we have watched over the course of the last 4 years where they did not have either Diggs or Davis, if not both. And now it's like, whoa, this looks way different. So we were actually having to talk on the sideline, just completely like, hey, they're an 11 personnel. So they got 3 receivers on the field. First snap offensively of the season. Who are the 3 guys? And I said Samuel, Shakir, and MVS with Kincaid at tight end. I think those would be the guys who I would say have the best chance of getting snaps early on. Now, I say that probably realizing Mac Hollins might be an even safer bet to make the team than MVS. And Keon Coleman was obviously a very high draft pick. I'm just saying it from the stance of like, I don't know how much they'll throw on Keon Coleman immediately. I don't know the answer to that. I guess this is just a really long-winded way of saying the offense is going to look so different this year. So much more different than any of the last several years. This feels more like 2019 than it does any of these years in the last couple.
I mean, I think Keon Coleman's going to be on the field a lot, obviously. He's going to be taking over the role of Gabe Davis. Maybe not on the field as much as Gabe Davis, obviously, who never left, it seemed like, never left the field. He'll be on the field a lot, but it's going to be a very, very heavy Dalton Kincaid-focused type of passing attack, I think, in a lot of ways. And they'll be game planned, right? Some of that will go away each week. Some of that will come back each week. We'll see where it goes. But he not only got a lot of work that one day we were out there, he also made a couple spectacular catches. The kid has hands, right? I mean, we know he can catch the ball. You go look back at his season last year, Matt. I guess I forgot or didn't realize he had 91 targets. He was number 2 on the team last year. I think you and I probably would agree sitting here, he'll be the number 1 target guy on the team. Do you agree that this year, like he would be the number 1 target guy on the Bills?
Yeah. The interesting thing is who's going to be number 2, because I think that's where the debate is. I think that he's definitely going to be the guy who gets the most targets this year.
Yeah, he had 91 last year. I think it's well over 100 this year for Dalton Kincaid. And then from there, we'll see where these guys slot. So let's get to Chase Claypool, the other guy that you figured that I would talk about. He also was very impressive at the first day of OTAs. All right, Matt, Chase Claypool. Just your impressions. I was impressed. He made a great grab we saw near the sidelines. Then we talked to him on the field, off the field. What'd you think?
Yeah, so on the field, he had the catch of the day. Now take that with a grain of salt. It was against Jamarcus Ingram. He made the catch over on a pass from Mitch Trubisky. So it's not like it was an immediate connection between Josh Allen and Chase Claypool out on the field. But he did make a high-pointed contested catch, which is what they've been looking for a long time. But to me, the more impressive part was the way that he held himself off the field and just the responses that he was given to the questions that he were asked about basically like, hey, like this hasn't worked out in a lot of different places. At a certain point, you kind of have to look yourself in the mirror and say, what am I doing wrong? And it felt like, at least from this first 12 or 13-minute interview, that he was ready to take accountability, realizes that he needs to be better both on and off the field, and also realizes that he doesn't have that many more opportunities left and he needs to make the most of this. So that's the sense that I got. And the other people who talked to him, we all kind of said the same thing. It was like, wow, like that was pretty impressive. And Sean McDermott talking about him was maybe the most glaring or the most obvious tell that we got. Like Sean McDermott felt like went out of his way to really, really hammer home how impressive Chase Claypool has
Let me ask you a question. Do you think any of that? And I agree with you. I've thought about it because it's kind of a little abnormal for McDermott to do that in this setting right now. He's very much like, well, like all of our players, they have to work hard and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
I think, maybe you disagree, I think maybe there's some games also going on where McDermott through the media is trying to show Chase Claypool, hey, we have confidence in you, because I think he could be very fragile right now. And maybe it's his way of restoring the mental confidence in him to say, he's hearing this in the media. Oh yeah, my coaches believe in me. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to show them. Because maybe if you hear the other message, it could get him to a spot where you don't want him. You need him really believing he can be that player he was when he came in the league.
Yeah, they're trying to build up his confidence right now. And he
Yeah.
has at least proven at times that he has been able to perform in this league. I have not changed my assumption, projection on what Chase Claypool is. I think that he probably makes the Bills roster, but I don't think he's anything more than a depth piece. But the thing I will say is he has a chance of contributing as a depth piece more than some of the guys they've had there in years past. I think right now you've probably got 3 or 4 wide receivers who are competing for 2 or 3 jobs. I think the locks in the wide receiver room are Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and actually Mac Hollins, believe it or not, because of his special team stuff. And just because I think the way they've talked about him, they signed him pretty early in the season. That tells me that they have a plan for him. Then
I'm
after
close
that,
to a lock on him. I haven't been. I'm close to a lock. I agree with you. I think that all these things adding up are putting him in that category a little bit more lately.
So then you get to, those are 4 guys. I think they'll keep 6 or 7. The next names that come up are Marquez Valdes-Scantling. That is how you say his name. I asked him. He was very nice about it. So we can call him MVS, Quez, or Marquez. Chase Claypool. And then Bills fans' favorite, Justin Shorter, Tyrell Shavers, Andy Isabella, like KJ Hamler. I think all of those guys that we're talking about are competing for basically 2 spots.
Yeah, I think it's 3 guys for 2 spots. I think it's MVS, Clay, and Shorter. But I'm not going to completely dismiss anybody else if they just pop, but they would have to pop. To me, KJ Hamler has to give them a reason to keep him. You know what I mean? Like he's got to show we got to keep this guy. Whereas I think MVS, Clay, Shorter, they're bigger. They have, in the case of the first 2, they put in work. They've been productive in this league. Not Shorter, but Shorter has the investment of the draft pick, their own draft pick, just a year ago. I think they're in a bit of a different tier for different circumstantial reasons. We've seen Isabella. He's been here. Maybe he's a return man, maybe not, but it's been a year. He's been here. He couldn't really crack the field last year. I think MVS, Clay, and Shorter are fighting for 2 spots, and the other guys, wild cards, if they force their hand, because if KJ Hamler goes out there and just flies down the field and catches 2 or 3 bombs during preseason, during games, you might be like, we just got to keep this kid because he does something nobody else does. That's about it, though. That's the only way I could see it.
I feel like KJ Hamler is going to have the conversation that we had about Tavon Austin, or it's going to be like, okay, in training camp, this is a guy we could see making an impact on this team or potentially having a role. And then who knows how that plays out. With Tavon Austin, it didn't necessarily work out at all. KJ Hamler, younger, more upside, at least at this point in where his career is compared to where Tavon Austin's career was when the Bills had him in. But I just don't see it happening. I mean, Chase Claypool is a guy who is produced in this league. And with them, it's not like they broke the bank for MVS, but Josh Allen isn't having those level players over his house for dinner and recruiting them for guys who might not make the team. MVS is going to be on this team. I'm very confident in that as well. I'm not ready to say lock, but MVS is closer to a lock than on the bubble for me. And that's why I said a little bit ago, who are the guys that they're starting if they're in 11 personnel week one?
Yeah.
I think MVS is going. MVS has played in back-to-back Super Bowls. You know, like I know we can say like, oh, well, he's had trouble with drops and he hasn't been consistently dominant and he wasn't, worth what they paid him in Kansas City. All of those things can be true, but he also played really well in the playoffs last year. Like, he had a really good catch against the Bills, a contested catch against Micah Hyde. He had a big catch against the Ravens that iced the game. And then he caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Like, that means something.
I don't think he's a lock. I think that he's still, those inconsistencies can't be there. He's also had two teams walk away from him over the last few years, right? I mean, it's not like teams are just dying to keep him on their roster because he's had some inconsistencies. I do think that he has more opportunity here, just like Chase Claypool, because it's not the super deep receiving core. But even the Chiefs, Matt, who have their own issues at wide receiver, they didn't do much to keep him.
Yeah, but it would have cost them a lot of money to keep him based off the contract that he had. And the Chiefs they have more flexibility than the Bills have. But I think it's, hey, we would like to keep him if it didn't cost as much. I even heard, and I read a couple places that the Chiefs had thought about even bringing him back.
I did too.
If they could get him for the right price. Maybe they weren't willing to go as far as the Bills were willing to go, but I see a role on this team for him because he also has a skill set that's just a little bit different than some of the other guys. Like, MVS is going to be the guy you take deep shots to honestly just keep a defense honest, right?
He
like,
did lead the league in yards per catch one year. In 2020, 20.9 yards per reception. And for his career, he's a 17-yard a catch guy.
I mean, there's a lot of similarities to Gabe with MVS.
I know, isn't there?
There's big plays, depth of target, inconsistent hands. It's just Gabe Davis got like $14 million more than MVS did because he's young and he's still got some upside that people maybe don't see in MVS. But I don't think you're going to get nearly the blocking prowess with MVS as you did with Gabe. I think that's going to be Mac Hollins. But I really do think that almost every game we are going to see a deep shot or multiple deep shots to him to keep a defense honest. And then who knows, maybe a hit on a couple of them. He's going to be right now their best deep threat option.
Other than Hamler, if he can get going.
Yeah, but I'm honestly, I'm not expecting that. I would be pleasantly surprised if KJ Hamler ends up making the team.
Of course. That'd be amazing if he It'd be amazing if he just even chose it. Like, if it's a guy that even you could keep him around and on the practice squad or whatever to have that ability to have flexibility around the roster. By the way, MVS 6'4", 206. Gabe Davis 6'2", 225. So he's taller, but he's lankier. But I agree. I think the style of game, the game they play, the inconsistencies, but at the same time, the big plays, that very similar to Gabe Davis. Okay. The other bit of news from OTAs was who wasn't there or why they weren't there or weren't participating. Daquan Jones, Rasul Douglas, not a part of OTAs, did not show up. It's voluntary. No concern there. People have asked me, any concern there? No, I wouldn't. I mean, it's voluntary, right? And Rasul Douglas, I have no issue why they would, I'm not concerned.
No.
Injuries, though. Matt Milano, he did not participate. Sean McDermott said maybe closer to training camp. Maybe get some drill work in before then. Does that sound right to you? Does it concern you in any way?
The fact that they're putting at least a little bit of a timeline on it, at least tells me that they are expecting that he will be a full, ready-to-go guy by the time of the season, because they would not unnecessarily paint themselves in a corner like they basically just did. if they still thought that there was a
They
chance he
never do
wasn't
that.
ready,
Yeah.
they never do that. They
No.
never paint
Right.
themselves in a corner. It's completely intentional. But the fact that they said, okay, we think he'll be more closer to a full go by training camp tells me that basically he's going to be like every other guy. He's going to get to training camp, and then they expect that he's going to be, the guy that he was as they begin their season. So not a shock. I think maybe some people were hoping that he would have been closer to that point now, but we're not that far from training camp. And also remember, really, there's a month break in here. So
Yeah.
maybe it would have been earlier if there wasn't that month break. But from mid-June to mid-July, these guys all go back and hang out and they go on vacation. Like he'll go back to Florida and just probably continue rehabbing, and then I'm fully anticipating that Matt Milano runs out of the tunnel in pads the first day that they're in pads at training camp.
He's really the only one that we could have that question for, but it is notable that Spencer Brown is not participating because he had offseason shoulder surgery. He's still recovering from that. And then, as I said earlier, Mike Edwards' shoulder injury, they put a timeline on that. I think McDermott said 3 or 4 weeks or a few weeks, something like that is what he said. But there are some notable guys that are kind of dealing with some ailments who weren't out there, at OTAs. But I would say this, Matt, like any fans listening, wondering, they're going to slow play at this time of year. They're not going to rush anybody in. There's no reason to do that. All you're going to do is give it more of a chance to be re-injured, and then they miss even more time. You have mandatory minicamp coming up, and even then, if guys are dealing with anything, you just back off them and wait till you get to training camp. That's the way I see it, and that's what I think they're kind of doing here with all of these guys who have these bumps and bruises.
Yeah, for sure. It's just like there's no benefit right now of rushing anybody. There's no reason to. There's not enough actual stuff that's happening. I mean, sure, you want to get them on the same page. You want to get them acclimated with their new teammates, but it's not like they're not there. Mike Edwards was on the field. Matt Milano was at the facility. Yep. A lot of these guys are there without just participating in those drills, and that's fine. To take your time. No reason to be overly, risky.
So before we go, I wanted to just say thank you, and it was awesome. We had a roundtable discussion on a panel on Tuesday night at Buffalo State University at the Birchfield Penny Art Center, and I was the moderator, and it was myself moderating for Maddie Glab, Chris Brown, Steve Tasker, John Murphy, and Vic Carucci. It was awesome. Thank you so much to the people who went. Thank you to Odyssey and WGR Sports Radio 550, and of course the Buffalo Broadcasters Association. We had a great time. Matt, we were expecting to go an hour to an hour and 15. We went 2 hours, and I could have gone 2 more hours because the Q&A was taking so long from people, which is great. We wanted to get through all the questions. I went an hour asking them questions, and we got great stories about old-time stadiums and press boxes and covering games because it was a broadcasting type of roundtable, and that was great. And then we did a Q&A. Here's a question that I got 2 people to ask me afterwards. They didn't want to ask it necessarily on the microphone. Maybe they were embarrassed or thought it would be a kind of a, well. So I get this question a lot. Maybe you get it a lot. Okay. And it kind of is a pet peeve of mine, a question, because anyway, I'll just ask you. So I am the beat reporter for the Buffalo Bills for WGR. You are a reporter anchor, but you cover the Bills. It's kind of a beat for you. You're there all the time. And I get asked by people all the time, and I was asked this twice Tuesday night. How come Adam Schefter's and Ian Rappaport's of the world break the news and not the local people? And I get this all the time. And it's a pet peeve of mine because I think the insinuation is we're not close enough to the team to get information. That's our job. We're not doing our job enough. And maybe I'm just being too sensitive. I don't know. I wanted to address it here because I'd like you to give your kind of take on that question. But what I'll say is my general answer is, well, the agents tell those guys everything. The agent calls Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter and says, my client is signing with the Buffalo Bills and he's getting this much money, because it behooves the agent to have the national person report all these big numbers. They're not going to call Sal or Matt to do it because we're the Buffalo reporter. And if we do get information, of course, we would love to be first to share it, but we also have to vet it. We go through the Bills, and there's a process for us to do it. It's not like we don't have relationships. It's not like we don't know news. Of course we do. But that's my answer that I give. It's really all about the agents giving the information, not the teams, to those insiders.
Yeah, the agents to the insiders. And if you're wondering, well, why would the agents give to the insiders? There's a couple layers to the conversation here. 1, to Sal's point, they've got the biggest reach. 2, the agents can manipulate the information in a way that it paints their client in the best light. For example, hey, they're getting $15 million. Well, in a week or two, we might learn that it's really $9 million, but there's $6 million in incentives, but the initial report will say $15 million, which makes the player look good and it makes the agent look good and all of that stuff. And the other thing is that the insider can provide insight on what they are hearing that might also help the agent in a different negotiation, because most of these guys don't just represent one player. So if Agent X calls Insider Y and says, hey, have you heard anything about this player potentially going for this much money? Then the insider can say, actually, I've heard that there's not as much interest as been reported. And then the agent can go, interesting. Okay, well, maybe we can lowball them a little bit, or maybe we can get them for a better deal than we thought we were going to be able to. It's a big game. It's also their full-time job, right? Like we've got a million other things that we're doing, as do a lot of people. But it's just, for me, I always say the juice isn't worth the squeeze. The juice of breaking a news story is not worth the amount of effort it would take for somebody locally to do it. That's just my kind of answer that I would give.
Or for it being something where if you potentially have something wrong about it, it costs you a lot of credibility, right? Like I always say, it's way better to be right than be first. I don't care who breaks the story. There was a time period where everybody wanted to break the story. I don't think anybody cares about that as much anymore. I don't. I'd love to. It's great if I get it. But holy cow, if you're first and you're wrong, that is such a bad look, and it's such a knock on your credibility. If you're second or third or fourth and confirm that it's right and you have the right information, that's fine. What's more important to me is not the first part of it. It's the why. It's the insight. It's the backstory. Once we do find out something, that's when a Matt Bove, a Sal Capaccio, somebody else who's on the beat, somebody else who's in the media room, can talk with relationships of people in the building and say, hey, what was going on? Why'd you sign that guy? Why'd you wait so long? We get insight then. And I don't think that's something the insiders provide as much of.
Also, and I don't want to put words in Sal's mouth here, but this is something we've talked about, not on the podcast. There are a lot of instances where we'll have a heads up, but we can't get it confirmed through another 100%. Secondary source. But when that's the case, you can do all of the legwork. So if you find out from somebody that you trust, the Bills are drafting Keon Coleman, then you can do a bunch of legwork and have all of the stuff you need about Keon Coleman ready to go. So the minute that they draft Keon Coleman, you can press publish on the story and you can have the graphic, or, there's just certain instances here where I don't feel comfortable with just one person telling me something to report it, but I trust the person enough that I'm going to start to do the legwork, that when it does happen, I'll at least kind of be ready for it. That's honestly a lot of the schedule too.
Yes.
I know that there's people who are listening to this and we do our schedule release and they're like, why don't you just tell us the schedule? Because I don't want to be wrong. And I don't have it from that many people where I'll feel super confident about it. But I also had all my flights booked by 4:00. So, you know what I mean? So it's like a little bit of give and take there.
No doubt. Anyway, that was the answer to that. But I did get that question a couple of times, and I get that question a lot. So I wanted to address it here on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, which you can find wherever you podcast, or of course at the Sal Sports YouTube page. We got a lot more coming up this summer, this offseason, into training camp. Make sure you're following along with Matt at WKBW TV Channel 7, and of course me on WGR Sports Radio 550. Thanks a lot to Mike Robier, our producer. Matt, enjoy the heat. We'll be back down next Tuesday at OTAs again after Memorial Day. What do you got going Memorial Day? Anything cool with the fam?
Nothing cool as of right now. I would really love to get out in golf a couple times this weekend. I play Sal. My rounds the other day started with a 7. So only my second round of the year shot a 79. It only gets
better from there, though. That's the good news.
So it won't, but I was excited because I'm an 8 handicap. So a 7 should be kind of like in the wheelhouse, but it was early in the year. I missed a 2-foot or 3-foot putt on 18 for a 78 and I got new irons and I'm hitting them. Really, my best round ever is a 74. I'm not to that point at all right now, but my irons, I got new irons.
Wait, you started with a 7 on a par 4?
No. I said my best round ever is a 74.
I know, but you said your round the other day started with a 7.
No, maybe my mic cut off. My best ever round is a 74. on Sunday
Oh,
when I
I'm
played
sorry.
last
I'm
Sunday.
sorry. I think your mic cut
Yeah,
out
yeah,
because
yeah.
I thought you meant you shot a 7 on the first hole that you played, and that's why I said it can only get better from there. My apologies.
No, no, no. So I finished with a 79. So I was excited about
Wow.
that. So I do think that
Love it.
thank you. So I think that if I can play a little bit more, that was my second round of the year, my second full round of the year. I think if I can start to play a little bit more, then maybe I can be a little bit more consistently in
Mhm.
that range. I think I'm pretty consistently in like the 80 to 84 range, but if I
Uh-huh.
could just shave a couple shots off and have a few more
I love
rounds
it.
that start with a 7, that's always nice.
Well, I went to Florida and played, and I shot 83s and 84s, and then I came back here to Buffalo and I shot over 90 when I my first time out. So you never know what's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
It's a funny
Maybe just
game,
gotta
isn't it?
maybe you just gotta move back to Florida to play better golf there.
All right, we're gonna step aside here until the next time we talk to you on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Hope you have a nice round of golf and a great Memorial Day if we don't talk to you before then.